Hello, everybody. My name's Michael Grant. Welcome to another Proptech Ramble. Today, we are talking to a gentleman called Colin Stewart, who's the CEO and founder of Baker Stewart, a workplace consultancy business in the UK, but they do work globally. Colin's on today because we are starting to go back to the office. We've always been working. To quote Mr. Slumbers, who mentioned to me in a tweet or a LinkedIn message that I talked about going back to work, where we all have been working, but we are now heading back to the office. So I would like to welcome Colin Stewart. Colin, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
Hello, everybody. Good. My name's Michael Grant.
We actually had another meeting this morning, which you had to run out of to try and go to another meeting. So thanks very much for getting home and jumping back on
Stewart, who's the CEO
back
and
to
founder
work,
of Baker
or back
Stewart,
to the office, as I should say.
A workplace consultancy business in
back to
the
the
UK, but
office.
they do work globally.
I've been out for 3 weeks.
Colin's on
because
today
I
because
my Achilles,
we
so I haven't been in the office for 3 weeks.
I've
I've
been working from home, always been
not
working.
doing a lot of steps to help
to quote
prepare the
Mr.
injury.
Slumbers,
But today was my
who
first day in
mentioned
the
in a
office for
tweet
3
or a
weeks. I
LinkedIn
have
message
noticed
that I
a
talked about
difference.
going back to work, where
The
we all
platform
have
was
been
busier,
working, but
the
we are
train was
now
busier,
heading back to the
walking
office.
across London Bridge was busier.
So I would like to welcome Colin
Stewart. Occupancy index is
thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
10 years
Hello,
ago,
everybody.
20 years ago, my name's Michael Grant.
We actually had another meeting this morning, which you had to run out
manually.
to try and go to
Today,
another meeting. So thanks very much for
to a
getting home
gentleman
and
called
jumping back
Colin
on
Stewart,
this.
who's data
So back to work, or back to the office, as I should
a
say.
workplace consultancy business in
back
the
to the
UK,
office
but
we
they
start
do
that.
work globally.
I've been out for 3 weeks.
Colin's on today
because
my Achilles,
so I haven't
just
been in
before
the
I
office
do
for
that,
3 weeks.
so
I've
I've
been
been
working
working
from
from
home,
home, always been
not doing a lot of
working,
steps.
I warn everyone today was my first day in a tweet.
I can talk
I have noticed I different going back to work. We all have been working,
this
but
is
we are now heading back to the office.
So
I would like to welcome Colin.
Just do an introduction to yourself,
Stewart,
who you are, and where you
Colin,
came from, and what you
thank
did
you for
ticking
joining
before I
me.
get stuck with the question.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
10 years ago, 20 years ago, my name's Michael Grant.
We actually had another meeting this morning, which you had to run out
manually.
today.
Now,
Thanks very much for getting home and jumping back
I've
on
been
this.
who's data
CEO
back
and
to
founder
work,
of Baker
back
Stewart,
to the office,
as I
a
should
workplace
say.
consultancy business in
back
the UK,
before
but
we
they
start
do
that.
work globally.
I've been out for 3 weeks.
Colin's on
because
today
I was my
years,
Achilles,
very
so I've
hard
just
to
been in the
start
office for
that.
3 weeks.
I've been working from home, always been
not doing
working
a lot of steps.
I
Cool.
warn
You're
everyone
working
today was my first day in a tweet.
I can talk
I have
years
noticed
on
I
this.
different
Going
going
back
back
years
to
on
work.
the
We all
platform
have
was
been
busier.
working.
This is
Now
now
heading back
Ramble
to the office.
Probably ran busier.
So I would like to welcome
Just do an introduction to yourself, who you are, and where you came from.
Thank you for joining
Before I
me.
get stuck with the question.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
10 years ago, 20 years ago, my name's Michael Grant. We actually had another meeting this morning, which you had to run manually. Today, now, thanks very much for getting home and jumping back on Stewart, who's data CEO and founder of Baker Stewart, the office as a workplace consultancy business in the UK, but they do work globally. I've been out for Colin's on today because my Achilles.
For businesses and their people, so we have maximum impact and really help people's well-being and the well-being of the business.
I think, given that we work together very regularly and we have a very close relationship and partnership because of what you do and what we do, I think as we go back to the office now, I mean, we were talking just before coming on air, Colin, that you guys are busier than you have been for a long time. Everyone was really busy before COVID, then COVID hit and we all kind of stopped and slowed down. But as you were saying, you're hiring new people, kind of weekly at the moment to keep up with what you're doing. A lot of what you used to do manually can now be done with sensors and data and information. And I have to say, from when we first met, you were probably the first person that came to us and said, sensors are going to do what we've done manually for years. So I need to get with it, move with it, or else we'll be left behind. So, what you said earlier about coming into this space and caring and being passionate about it, that's very true because of what we see and the customers we work with. But I think more than ever, and this is something we were talking about the other day, everyone talks about data as the new oil, and I'm going to steal something you said to me the other day, Colin. So oil is no good unless it's refined. Data is the same, right? You can't, data for data's sake is meaningless and doesn't mean anything to anyone. So put sensors in, use a platform, but you still need smart people to help people work through that data and turn it into valuable pieces of insight. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today. We have already had some questions come through And one of them came through prior to this. We always ask people to try and send questions through. So one of the questions that's come through, I'm just going to read this out, is from someone called Rowley Mags. What is the one thing to enhance, adapt, change to deliver improved revenue metrics in a work environment? So as we start to talk about data, kind of that's the first question that's come out that came in the other day.
Yeah, it's probably not one thing. Well, the key thing to change is productivity. There's a temptation, especially with the post-COVID scenarios of reduced utilization we're likely to see, to focus on real estate cost. But considering your real estate cost is typically for an organization around 10%, your staff costs are 80-90% of a lot of businesses. It's a sort of almost a 10-to-1 multiplier between staff cost to real estate cost. So focusing on how you can make your people more productive and how you can make your workspace work better for your people. So, it's about space, it's about choice. There's a lot of interesting metrics around if you give staff choice over artwork, over where they work, all of that, productivity goes through the roof. Space obviously has an impact in terms of creating the right space. What we're predicting or seeing is a massive shift from desk-based workstations to much more collaborative-based workstations. Workplaces. So, going forward with businesses that are going to adopt a lot more flexible working practice, going to allow people potentially to work from home more often. I think most businesses are. There's a few exceptions, like the announcement from Goldman Sachs, which I think is a bit of a retrograde step personally, but it's their business.
It was an interesting comment, that one.
Yes. We are seeing, I am seeing a bit of a shift back towards wanting people back in the office as things are, but a lot of people have been working quite productively at home, or very productively. Yeah. So actually, I think this whole idea of the hybrid solution, a mix of, working from home, working in local hubs, working in the office, that will enhance productivity. That will give people choice. Spaces in the office that are much more around collaboration, getting people to integrate, breaking down silos, that will enhance productivity. All of that as well will, businesses that adopt these sort of practices, you'll probably see an improvement in staff attraction, but more importantly, hopefully, a drop in staff attrition, so improvements in staff retention levels. And that can have a massive impact on your bottom line. If you think about your average organization loses 10% of their staff every year. And there was a PricewaterhouseCoopers survey, and we did some research ourselves on it. And typically the cost of a member of staff leaving is 1 to 2 times their annual salary. So you think about that's 10 to 20% of your staff costs walk out the door every year. What impact would that have to your bottom line if you reduce that? And you do that by allowing choice, by embracing the brave new world post-COVID way of working that everyone's talking about. But to be honest, as I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's just taking forward the stuff that we've been talking about for 20 years.
Yeah, and actually doing it now.
It's removed a lot of the barriers, actually. It's made my job a lot easier, to be honest. But the final point actually comes more to the data side. Things like CO2, as you well know, Michael, have a massive impact on productivity. And that's where Proptech can come in. Proptech helping with the choice, the user experience, but also Proptech in terms of the sensors, allowing choice of space and, sensors around air quality, things like that, having a massive impact on having smart buildings that respond to the users and improve their productivity.
Yeah, CO2 is a bigger one than people think. Everyone used to remember they were tired in meeting rooms. They didn't know why, but COVID's made us all indoor air quality experts. And 1,000 parts per million of CO2 is the equivalent of having 2 pints of beer. I'd rather have 2 pints of beer physically than be feeling the effects of CO2. So
yeah, you don't have the happy side effects.
Yeah. We've got there is a point that I wrote down on this. So there is. I did some research because Rowley sent the question in quite a few days ago. The organizations with a highly engaged, productive employees had an average 3-year revenue growth 2.3 times higher than companies whose employees were only engaged on an average level. Now that's from the Kenneth Flagger Business School. That's big, right?
Yeah.
We've all become indoor air quality experts because of COVID. Francesca Brady, the CEO of Aerated, who we work with, she's always talking about indoor air quality and always brings up CO2 and the effects on people. So it has a bigger effect than people think. So yeah.
Oh, it's massive. Yeah.
We've got another question. Sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say, the one-word answer, I think, really is, it's about using Proptech to give people the choice, to inform decisions on CO2 levels, inform decisions on where to go, which are the busy floors. That's how we're going to get the improvements in revenue.
Yeah. So another question that's come in is, how has the data that you gather to inform decision-making processes been influenced by Proptech in the last 10 years?
Oh, yes. Hugely. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we were doing it on spreadsheets, manual pieces of paper, copies of space plans on a clipboard with a load of highlighter pens. Proptech was starting to come in. There was some good, for utilization data. We used to capture it by going around with tablets. We've been doing that for about the last 8 or 9 years. But lately, sensors are so much more cost effective. You might not get the same depth of data that you get from walking around and observing, but you certainly get a much longer period of real-time data. You can really see the trends. And also, the last 10 years, there's been a lot more benchmark data available, for various things on office cost, office satisfaction surveys, and obviously the utilization data, which allows you to make a lot more informed decisions. Also, I think the Proptech solutions have got a lot better. I think people are a lot less cynical about it. We're actually seeing solutions that work, good solutions that focus on the user experience. That's the key for me. Everything should be designed around the customer experience, and for most of our customers are obviously the building users.
And I think from our side, what we see, and when we're talking to people, there are, the statement that came out, the article that I sent on to you the other day about HSBC saying a 30% reduction, Lloyd's 20%, Barclays nothing, and then Goldman Sachs with their wonderful abomination statement. Lots of people are going to need a lot of data quickly to make informed decisions. Like, I've got a 10-story building, 10,000 square feet of floor. I've got to reduce by 30%. If you have, and this is kind of a question for me that's not up here, Colin, but it's something that's come into my brain, is if you have different buildings, different shapes, different sizes, and different amounts of people in them, and you say, I'm going to cut 30% across the board, you can't just necessarily say to everyone, right, we're cutting 30% across the board everywhere, because that doesn't work for buildings.
Yeah.
So how do you go about helping people with that?
Yeah, it's the qualitative data. The quantitative data from the sensors give you the opportunities, and from other sources. That's really important, but you need to interpret it. You need to see it through the lens of the impact on the business. So obviously you've got your lease data, you've got that sort of thing when you're developing a real estate strategy, but it's trying to understand the activities that people are performing, where they're going to perform them to, what workspaces they need where. So it's almost like it gives us an opportunity to almost start again. What I suggest to clients is that they forget that they've got any property, and we start from the bottom up, build a theoretical blueprint model for how they want to work, what sort of workspaces they need to support that, where they need to be, and what the mix is between offices, between local hubs, home, client sites, wherever, and then overlay it on your current property portfolio and see how it shakes out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Given we're in a new world post-COVID, that probably makes more sense than it ever has done before.
The one thing I say to my clients when they ask me what's the future is the one thing that is certain is the future is uncertain.
Yeah.
We need data to base decisions on, but to be honest, until we get post June, July, until the vaccines start to allow us to come back en masse, and we see what the reality is for a lot of businesses in terms of how much people actually want to be in the office versus home working, other remote working, we won't really know. So we can use these surveys, we can use benchmark data. We use a survey called People Look that's a well-being survey, as you know well, and that's giving us some really interesting data around future working patterns and people's desires. But actually, that's still subjective. Until we actually get to this future, I was about to use the phrase "new normal." That is being done today. The future, the steady state, whatever we might call it. Until we get to that point, we don't really know. But we've got to get as much data as we can to base decisions as best we can. Evidence-based design is something I always trumpet. It's a sort of mantra of mine.
And we've got another question here. Have you seen a marked acceleration in the number of solutions available as a result of COVID? Now, we have, but I imagine you have as well. You know, there's people trying to flog new solutions to you every day. But have you? What have you seen?
Well, thankfully, they're getting a lot more sophisticated than lots of Perspex screens, or the worst I saw, which was a cardboard box you could put your head in. That was fantastic. You know, what an innovation. They painted it white, mind you. It sort of made me question, if you're really having to go to that length, why are you in the office in the first place? It's done two things. It's made clients, I think, because of the uncertainty, clients are much more open to the idea of investing in, Proptech to deliver the data they need. And also the Proptech industry has realized it's a big opportunity, that effectively we're going to have a step change in our relationship to the office, and things are going to be much more uncertain, things are going to be much more dynamic, much more variable, and without some sort of Proptech solutions to deliver that data that we need and to deliver a user experience in a much more variable, dynamic workplace, we need all of that, really.
Yeah, Proptech has seen that it's a big new space, right? There's a new Proptech company comes into the market almost every month at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, the amount of emails I'm getting with people promising to, solve everything for me.
The silver bullet. Yeah. There is no silver bullet though. So there's another question that came in prior to this. Thank you everyone who sent questions in. It's really good to get them prior to, so we can do a little bit of reading and put a little bit of brain power behind them as well. Have you seen significant uptake in the number of clients who want to use Proptech solutions post-COVID, both to gather data and as long-term solutions?
Absolutely. We've had several clients in the past who've been very interested. We've had a number where we've done trials on various Proptech solutions, and there's been some very interesting case studies out there. But it's almost, it's just accelerated so much. The amount of interest, the conversations we're having, our conversations are obviously mainly around the future workspace and what clients might need going forward. However, they always turn to potentially Proptech solutions now, whereas before now, they probably would get shut down. Oh, I haven't got the money to invest in that. Oh, that's not for us. Now it's, oh, really? Okay. Clients are recognizing, I said earlier, that things are going to be much more variable. Things are going to be much more dynamic. The old cookie cutter approach to workplace design just doesn't work anymore. I've never been a fan of that anyway. Every organization is unique. However, it fundamentally won't work going forward.
No, I think as well that the longer term solution, and this is not a short term thing, because if you try and take it as a short term piece, it's hard to drive ROI for a customer within 3 to 6 months. Although you can do it sometimes. We've done it for a customer before. But if you look at the long-term solution, and say long-term, we're not talking 15 years, but 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the ROI, and we've built a calculator because of this, because the ROI is so great. 3 to 5 years, if you can put 30% more people onto a floor or into a building, given the cost of office space, and you can close a building down, that the ROI is off the charts. I mean, the cost of the software, the services, the installation, the platform, if you amortize that over 3 years, or you draw that cost out over 3 to 5 years, there is no better ROI, I don't think.
Well, I would challenge you on that. There probably is no easier ROI.
Easier ROI.
Back to what I said earlier about it being about choice and productivity. the ROI on real estate reductions pays for the sensors easily, but actually the gains, where the gold is buried, is in the productivity improvements. That's where you really make the gains. And that's like the cream on top, massive amounts of cream on top.
Well,
so you can build the ROI based on the real estate savings by, but I think, as I say, it's a lot more measuring your attrition levels, measuring all of that, and seeing how your investment in Proptech has changed your productivity, has changed your people's morale, has improved their experience.
Well, then the businesses have to do something about it, which is what we hope everyone does, because getting the ROI is easy, as you say. It's doing something about it with those ROI savings, is investing it back into space and making spaces better. We've been talking to quite a few people, obviously, about going back to the office. People are talking about changing their office spaces, and not just being desks upon desks and a few meeting rooms. Collaboration spaces. I imagine you're hearing a lot about collaboration spaces. We hear a lot of people now saying, and we get asked, but measure my meeting rooms and everything else. So you overlay indoor air quality on top of this, and you talk about productivity and the occupancy and capacity, and you've got a very powerful solution. But people, just because you change a space doesn't mean it's going to work. So you have to measure the collaboration spaces. So in front of me is a whiteboard. You want to know how much time people spend at the whiteboard as opposed to sitting at the desks and the chairs that I'm sitting at now. So you do have to go further than just reducing your I've reduced my office number by 30%, but you're not getting rid of 30% of your team. Well, you want to make them more productive, and you want them to feel better when they come to the office for 2 or 3 days a week.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, until now, a lot of the default Proptech solution for office utilization was under desk sensors. Now, I'm not a big fan of those because they give a very linear, very flat data set. It's all about qualitative and quantitative data, and also getting a much broader data set. With an office that is going to shift away from task-based work settings, desks, to much more collaborative and also social. What we're actually hearing from a lot of staff, we're challenging through workshops we're running. We're challenging people to ask what is the office actually for now? Is it somewhere you're going to go and sit and tap away at a computer? Yes, for some it is. We must always remember that there is a percentage of people, whether it be personality or whether it be their home circumstances, often the younger members of staff who maybe are living in a bedsit or a shared house, who haven't got the luxury that we have, like I have at the moment. I'm sat at home to work from home. So we've always got to accommodate that. But for those other staff, the office has got to work so much harder to attract people in. We do want people to still come in. We do want people to still collaborate. But we can use the data to understand what spaces people really want. So the workspace becomes a much more fluid and dynamic thing, with us adapting to people's needs. That's the key.
I am one of those people that need to come in. When my children are on holidays and we have 3 and my wife is at home, I basically just get kicked out. So I'm someone who needs to come to the office. So another question is, how do you integrate, and you've already kind of answered this in our ramblings, Colin, how do you integrate quantitative and qualitative data into your recommendations?
Well, obviously, quantitative data gives you the hard facts. It's hard to argue with quantitative data. And that's why I've always been a big fan of utilization surveys, which are a bit irrelevant at the moment, but I think will come back big time once things go to some sort of steady state. But data, that's just data. For me, we talked about it earlier. It's the interpretation. It's refining the data. The so what. And the problem is quantitative data gives you the facts. Qualitative data, interviews, online surveys, opinions, as I mentioned, the People Look survey we use, gives us such a rich data set that allows us to interpret the other data through a lens of reality, I suppose, to actually to gain insight and actually get recommendations on what the constituent parts of the new workspace should be, how people, more fundamentally, how they should be working as a business. What is their model? Where they want to work, how they want to work, when they want to work, and what does that mean in terms of the workspaces they then need?
I think your People Look survey will be more, it's always been very useful. I think it'll be used more than it ever has over the next 18 months, 2 years.
we're seeing at the moment, when we've not been able to gather so much quantitative data, we're having to use the activity questions we have in there to really predict the balance of activity between home and the office, the workspace, to give some sort of indication for what people want in the office, how they want to work, and what facilities they then need, what types of workspace.
It'll be interesting to see what people come back with, because I imagine some buildings haven't been, refurbished for quite a long time. Some of the big finance institutions do them every few years. Some of the tech companies do them a lot, and they change with the times. It'll be interesting to see what some of the slower moving companies do with their layouts, because that is then the feedback you need. Because if you just go back to the office, that's the same old. Yes, it would be great to go back to the office to socialize with people, go to a pub when they open on April the 12th, and do other things. But if you go being at home and then having a change of scenery will be great for a while. But if you're going back to the same old office after a certain period of time that is stuffy, that is overcrowded, or doesn't have what you need, or it's the place you decide you don't want to be again, people will vote with their feet, I think. Absolutely. So people are going to have to change, aren't they? Businesses are going to have to change.
Those that don't, you're right, will be left behind. We've been running surveys ever since the start of first lockdown, way back in March. We worked for two major corporates who had call centres. They were essential service providers, and they had call centres who had to keep open. So we've been surveying their staff and doing a lot with them to keep, back before social distancing rules were really in place. We had to invent the social distancing rules for them. Luckily, we got it right. But what we're seeing is around 90% of staff would be unhappy or very unhappy to go back to how it was pre-COVID. And that's a massive amount of people.
That's big. That's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Yeah. That's an interesting dynamic. Wow, that's quite powerful. That's a big number. That's bigger than I thought. That's
disgruntled staff. Your staff disgruntled because you haven't done anything.
Yeah, that's a bigger number than I thought it would be. That's really big.
Well, actually, it's maybe not quite so big. It was actually 89%.
Oh.
Totally our data, rounding it up.
We've got another question. So, given what you do as Baker Stewart and your team, are there any drawbacks to Proptech solutions that you've seen out there?
There's been a lot of new solutions coming on market, and having been bitten in the past with things like under-desk sensors, and I think you described it as being vaporware. Yes. I think that's the big issue, is trust. Solutions are getting a lot better. We're now actually seeing implementations. We're not being asked to be the first, the early adopter while they're still developing it. We're actually starting to see mature solutions that have been tried and tested. But it is an incredibly fast-moving market, and some of the latest solutions are incredibly good. We're starting to see machine learning and AI coming into it. Yeah. Some really interesting solutions. Probably going to make me redundant. I probably in a few years.
hence why we're talking, Colin. Always. We've got another one. What is the one thing that you would like to see within Proptech that isn't readily available at present? And this doesn't need to be a physical piece of equipment per se. It can be anything.
Yeah, I would think there's still an awful lot of Proptech that is focused on the data for data's sake. They are missing the so what. They're forgetting what the data is for. End of the day, I link everything back to customer experience, building user experience. At the end of the day, that's what everybody in the real estate world, we're here for. Facilities managers, whatever we might be. End of the day, we're there to provide spaces that help people do their job as best as they can, that keep them happy, keep them productive, keep them loyal. That's what we're here to do. And I think some Proptech solutions are almost implementing solutions for solutions' sake, data for data's sake. It's about linking it through. The so what? So what is it actually you're trying to achieve? What is the purpose of this?
I was on a GRI club event yesterday, and this was one of the topics of conversation. Actually, is that data is data. It's not good data unless you refine it like oil. But that's where people and companies like you come in, because the sensor providers, the platform providers, the data in the platform, the visualizations and understanding utilization versus capacity and peaks and troughs and all that sort of stuff, you need people like you to help. So it's not always that there's data there. Some people need help to understand it and refine it to make it valuable. You can do that in a platform, but there's also other things that you can pull out of that data. There is a lot of vaporware there. I think because this industry is so young, and I've lost the bet from my team that we would not run over, because we do. We're already over, and we haven't even got through all the questions. But we'll keep going, Colin. There are a lot of this. This is so big and growing, this industry. There are a lot of companies they're all young and they're trying to get in and figure out how to make a buck. That they're selling the solution before they have the product. But once you have the product, it is the so what that is the important part that comes after. Here's my cool shiny product. Here's the so what? What about the data? So
someone once described it as the mom test. If you go to your mum with a good idea, she's going to say, "Oh yes, dear, that's lovely. What a great idea." You need to actually listen to your user, and what does the user want?
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So can you give any examples of clients who have used Proptech with considerable success?
I know, Michael, you've got a lot here, but there's obviously that one large financial institution we worked on together.
Yes.
It's considerable savings. We were able to use the data to negotiate with building control and get much greater allocation of staff to the building. Save them from taking on additional leases in the building, allow them to manage the workspace much more dynamically, reallocate people and direct people to different floors depending on utilization levels. It was about informed decision making. They were about to take additional floors. The data demonstrated them they didn't need it. They just needed a cultural shift.
I didn't report that in as a loaded question, I promise you, everybody. But it is one that we did work on together. So this goes back to something you said earlier. Another question is, how will Proptech impact on the way in which future offices function?
I think, fundamentally, for me, I think there's three levels that Proptech will have an impact. There's obviously the real-time data, and that comes back to user experience. How can we use that real-time data to make the environment responsive to occupancy levels, to make the environment responsive to CO2 levels, so that FM becomes proactive FM rather than reactive, so we're fixing faults before the user notices them. Using it, bringing in messaging, combined user experience apps that bring the data together with messaging platforms, desk booking, meeting room booking. You asked me earlier about what I'd like to see. I'd like to see some combined solutions that are around that user experience, that use the data, but also provide the interface and the experience for users to use the building in an easy way. There's obviously, secondly, using that data to drive real estate management of the building, to drive your facilities management, drive your cleaning, make your cleaning much more reactive, make it reactive to where it's needed, so that you can actually respond and change your service levels depending on occupancy levels. And finally, where the gold's buried for me is the trend data. Having a rich long-term data set across multiple buildings, benchmark data as well, that we can use to have the conversations with teams about what sort of workspaces they need, to have those informed conversations and make informed decisions about how we get best use of real estate and how real estate really delivers what the business needs.
I think, and I say this to people in my business and people we speak to, I think that data set is probably one of the most valuable. If you're looking at the next 3 to 5 years, if you've got sensors in 400, 500, 600 buildings ourselves, and then you've got all the other competitors of ours who've got 400 or 500 or 600 buildings, or however many we've all got, you've then got a data set of building utilization that you've never had historically. That data itself is hugely valuable. That's a data set there that people would pay money to, planners, businesses. Let's take Goldman Sachs, when they realize they probably don't need all that real estate, and they say, right, what do we do planning our next building? Is there somewhere where we can go and get a data set from a building where, we've got 5,000 people, how is that space being used by other people? That's a hugely valuable data set. No one has it yet, and no one in the world can say they have it yet. I agree with AI and machine learning, and over time that will help. But at the moment, there's not enough data in our space for people to make informed decisions, or AI and machine learning to make informed decisions. It's a great buzzword. Data is the new oil is another buzz phrase, but AI and machine learning, it will happen over time. But that's a hugely valuable data set over time, I think.
No, you're right. I mean, we've got, from all the manual utilization surveys we're doing, I've got 15 years worth of data. We're using that as much as we can, but you're right, it is still, we have it by sector, we can use it to a certain extent, but you just need so much data, and the more that we get and the more that is in the cloud that can then be mined and then interpreted, the better, really.
We have a customer, and actually this is quite a cool use case that came about from a suggestion on site. Measuring the capacity of people on floors was a back to COVID solution. They have restaurants and cafes. Number one was to make sure there wasn't any overcrowding for when people came back, and they're still not back, but eventually when they come back in the cafeterias. But they have a massive restaurant on the top floor of the building. One of the things we worked out we could do, apart from the overcrowding piece, is talking to the chefs and the people in the kitchen. If they have the data of knowing how many people have come out in and out of that restaurant Monday to Friday, they can order food based on people rather than just saying, we think we need X amount of chicken, or X amount of potatoes and vegetables and everything else. So that for a business, number one, it's saving cost if we go back to the very bones of it, of saving cost. Number two, environmental factors. You're not wasting food. Or then you're not cooking as many chickens or cows or vegetables or whatever it might be for whoever it might be. So there's an energy saving there, and then there's just the team's time. Like, you don't need to spend all of that time preparing lunch because at 2:00 it drops off a cliff and you can start to wind things down.
But there's also the user experience side. Wouldn't it be great if your building app, as well as having your desk booking data and all of that, shows you the queuing times, so I can choose when I go to the canteen.
Yeah, it's refined data, Colin. I call that refined data.
Add to it the gym. The gym is a treadmill available now? Oh, I'll go to the gym now.
Not sure how many people. Well, I imagine there's lots of people that are going to buy gym passes again and then go back to the gym for a month and then they're not.
And it's a good point. Where do you buy your gym pass? Are you going to buy one at the local gym to your home, or one at the local gym to where your office was?
That's why you got to get a gym pass that has multiple locations, Colin, and go wherever you want.
Absolutely.
Right. Colin, thank you very much. We have run over. Apologies, everybody. But it's Colin. It's been a pleasure as always.
I so enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. People, don't forget about our asset tracking competition. It is there to be won. The next episode of the Proptech Ramble is with a gentleman called Matthew Marson. He is the Director of Manufacturing and Technology at Arcadis. So we look forward to that and having Matthew on. Colin, have a lovely afternoon. Thanks very much for coming. Take care.
Thank you very much. Bye.